I am really excited for today's guest. Looking back on my childhood, I remember growing up, my father was bald, and to me it seemed like bald his whole life because by the time I came along, he was in his 40s. He had me late, so I just assumed, oh, dad was born bald, but that was not the case. He went bald very early. I'm going to say probably about 2021. But what I remember about it was this subject that I couldn't touch. Like we were not allowed to say the word, we were not allowed to bring attention to it. He was that self-conscious about it. And I remember all the comb overs and everything he did and the hats, how he tried to hide it. So today's guest is really I'm going to say the hair guru. Dr. Alan J. Bauman is an acclaimed board certified hair restoration physician with over 28 years of experience in the medical field. He is the founder and the CEO of Bauman Medical, which is an international leading treatment center in the field of hair restoration. Dr. Bauman received his medical doctor degree from New York Medical College and underwent internship and residency training in surgery at Beth Israel Medical Center and Mount Sinai Medical Center before dedicating his expertise to the specialized field of hair transplant surgery and the treatment of hair loss, with a particular focus on alopecia or hereditary male or female pattern hair loss. Dr. Bauman has established himself as an authority in the industry. He is one of approximately 200 physicians worldwide to achieve the certification from the American Board of Hair Restoration Surgery. He was voted #1 top hair restoration surgeon in North America by Aesthetic Everything for the 7th consecutive year, top hair restoration surgeon of the decade, and achieved the 2022 Lifetime Achievement Award in hair restoration. He's transforming healthcare in America, and I cannot wait to dive into this conversation. Dr. Bauman, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Carol. It's really great to be here with you.
So, how did you come to be in this field? I'm very curious. I always love to hear people's stories because usually there's something that drives us in a certain direction.
Sure. Well, I guess if you were wondering about how I became a physician, maybe you would ask my grandmother, when did Alan decide he wanted to go to medical school? And she probably would have said something like the day he was born. So I guess medical school was a little bit preordained, maybe almost like an arranged marriage in my family. But I did like science and I was pretty good at it. So it seemed kind of natural. But later on in life, I had the lucky opportunity to be mentored by a plastic surgeon who was a very close friend of the family. And he found out that my interest was into going into medicine. And he said, well, if you're going to go into medicine, you should come and watch me operate. And I didn't really know anything about plastic surgery. In fact, at that time, I thought he was operating on plastic. I didn't realize it was people. But I soon learned that it was actually cosmetic and reconstructive surgery, and I had the chance to overlook his shoulder while he was in the OR. And I was basically blown away by not only the surgical skill and his artistry, but eventually following his patients through follow-ups and recovery and their results, seeing their lives change through plastic surgery. So I always felt like that was a good direction to go. I kept my mind and my options open as I went through my internship and residency training. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew it was something creative and surgical at the same time. But I didn't know anything about hair, and I certainly didn't think hair transplantation back in the 1990s when I first got exposed to it was anything that people would maybe really would want. I figured probably just like everybody else that it was kind of pluggy and painful, and why would you ever want that or perform that? Until my mind was changed by meeting someone who had had a hair transplant. So that meeting, was basically kind of short. It was maybe 15, 20 minutes long. But what I learned from that patient, who was having something else done, by the way, he was maybe doing his eyelids or something, was that he had had a hair transplant. And I was looking at him, probably staring at him, trying to figure out where, because I was completely unable to tell. It looked 100% beautiful and natural. And so I ended up asking him about it because I was the nosy surgical resident. And it was my job to find out all about his hair transplants. And he was very forthcoming. He told me about how he selected the surgeon and a little bit about the process and the procedure, a single follicle, artistic creation of the hairline and so forth, how it worked, how his recovery went. And I was just fascinated because, as I said before, I thought all hair transplants were kind of pluggy and that, how could they look natural? And his was like staring me in the face. It looked amazing. The other thing I remember vividly about that conversation is how he said it changed his life. And so what he imparted to me was that after his procedure results came in, his life was really never the same. And that was a good thing. Socially and professionally, doors open to him that he didn't, have access before. And it was probably obviously the confidence, that led him down those paths. And so I just remember all of that and figured as a burgeoning plastic surgeon, maybe I should think about looking into the field of hair transplants. And so that's what got me interested originally, doing a little bit of research here and there, textbooks, journal articles, going to conferences, but actually visiting physicians nationally and internationally is how I learned the real deal about hair transplant surgery. And the more I learned, the more I liked. And I ended up doing a preceptorship program near where I lived in New York. And from then on, I decided I just wanted to do it full time. I got that excited about it. And so that's what happened. Back in the 1990s, I moved to Boca Raton with my wife, and we started the practice, Bauman Medical, with no staff, no patients, no team, not much of anything actually, and just tried to take care of those patients one at a time and hit a home run for them for every single patient through the door. And it's been a very quick 25 years in practice, almost 26 years, and well over 33,000 patients treated. And today, as you may have mentioned already, I don't know, I have a nearly 12,000 square foot facility, and just last year we treated over 3,300 patients. So it's been pretty exciting ride over that course of time, and a very fulfilling and rewarding career to have, because every day I get a chance to see people with better hair and big smiles on their face.
How has this changed over the decades? Because I remember I talked about my dad at the beginning of the podcast, but I remember there was such this kind of negative connotation associated with hair transplants at the time. You got to figure this was 1960s, 1970s. How has it
Sure.
changed over the decades?
Yeah, I still think that, hair loss and hair transplant is still a bit of a taboo topic. And, when you were saying about your dad who had hair loss, my dad was totally bald also when I was a teenager. And he ended up wearing a hairpiece for about 20 years until we had the chance to transplant him.
Oh,
So we totally transformed him, but I can understand, it was an early lesson on how it affected people, how hair loss affects people, seeing my dad kind of struggle eventually with the comb overs and then eventually with the hair system and so forth, going through that. But it's certainly less of a taboo topic today. I mean, today we have so many different celebrities and people prominently showing off their hair transplants. It's obvious if you look at people like Elon Musk, he's had something done. He's not a patient of mine. I have publicly called him out on social media because it was obvious with a short haircut. It revealed that he had a previous transplant. And if you can just look at the photos from when he sold PayPal, he may have been living in his parents' home, but he certainly paid for a hair transplant because he looks very, very different. He's got a lot of great hair. And so hair transplants have changed a lot. And I think the acceptance of hair loss, whether you shave it like, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, or you decide to restore it like, Elon Musk, um, certainly the work that we do in terms of helping prevent hair loss is so different today. The different regenerative treatments, interventions that we do in an early stage, the diagnostic tools that we have, DNA and AI powered microscopes and things like that have really changed the game. So we can get on top of the hair loss situation for both men and for women, for sure, at an earlier stage and create results that look amazing. So if you don't need a transplant, well, maybe just some, quick and easy therapies or treatments you can do at home or interventions once a year in the office can really improve your hair in terms of its quantity and quality. So it's been an exciting ride, but definitely I think people are more talkative about it today than they ever were. And maybe just social media has helped us engage that conversation,
Oh,
which is
I
so
think
nice.
so. Yeah, it really has opened that door. More people talking about it, more people seeking it, and not being as taboo. I think back to the commercials I would see about hair transplants back in the 70s, and yeah, it very different these days. Now, speaking about men and women, how does it differ when women lose hair or have hair loss? How is that different? What are the causes?
Sure. Well, the primary type of hair loss that we see in the practice is hereditary hair loss. And of course, there's hundreds of other reasons why you could be losing your hair, but hereditary hair loss looks different in both men and women. So that's where we usually start our conversation. When you remember your dad, or when you were, whether you were a teenager and you saw him totally bald and not allowed to mention anything about his hair, obviously it preserved the hair around the sides and the back of the scalp, but male pattern baldness receded the hairline, created a bald spot in the crown, and eventually those two areas kind of met in the middle, and that was the end. For women, it can happen a little bit later on in life. So for men, it can sometimes happen right after puberty, but in women, we usually see hair changes sometimes in the childbearing age. That could be PCOS, for example, could cause some hair loss situation. But certainly childbirth can create a telogen or a shedding phase. And then as we enter perimenopause and menopause, hormones can shift. And by the time a woman is 50 years old, she's got about a 50% chance of seeing some hair thinning, but it's not a huge receding hairline or bald spot in the crown typically from hereditary hair loss. It's usually a change in her ponytail volume, a change in the texture or color of her hair. It could be that there's less density, let's say in the frontal zone, but that preserves the hair around the sides and the back. So women typically still maintain those hairs in the good zones, right, that are relatively permanent around the sides and the back. But hereditarily, they can lose some of the hair in the frontal area, meaning that they have to change their part line, that it looks wider. So they have to move it to one side or the other, change their hairstyle to cover it. Or they may lose their bangs or see a little bit of a recession later on in the temple areas. And sometimes we see it also, hair loss can happen in women in that age with plastic surgery procedures like brow lifts or facelifts. You can sometimes lose some hair. Also with hormone replacement like testosterone, you can also see receding hairlines. So, but we take a very holistic approach. We want to look at all of the other factors that are involved because hair follicles are very sensitive organs. They're sensitive to hormones and blood flow, nutrition and fuel, nutrients and fuel, as well as stress and sleep. Just about anything that could dysregulate your health can affect your hair. And that's probably why hair is so important. We want it to look amazing. We want to show everybody that we're good and healthy and youthful, right?
Yes, I think it can be really devastating for a woman's self-confidence and self-esteem to lose hair and have hair thin. I remember when I turned 50 and I was working at an exercise studio and they did headshots for the studio and I got mine back and it was kind of like you had mentioned. I was unaware that my hair had started to change at that point. I'm assuming it was hormonal, because I always had gray hair. And then all of a sudden, 50 years old, and I'm looking at these pictures, and it was like a wake up call. I'm like, wow, my hair looks kind of thin, and it looks really brittle. I could tell the texture was different. I'm like, when did this happen? I had to see that photo for it to really resonate with me. Now I know when I did hormone replacement therapy, that was actually helpful in that area. Do you see that too?
Well, it kind of depends. If you're sensitive to androgens, right, that's a hereditary factor, essentially. That's what causes male pattern baldness, female pattern baldness. Androgenetic alopecia is the term that we use to describe that condition. If you're adding testosterone into the mix, no matter which way you're doing it, it can sometimes affect your hair detrimentally. Now, of course, testosterone can increase hair growth in other places, maybe unwanted places, which is not so good. But normalizing or optimizing your other hormones can be very, very helpful. So, here in my practice, for example, I have a functional medicine department, and we look at hormone optimization as a solution for hair because many times when you have that imbalance or over treatment, let's say, with other things, once we regulate and normalize things, that's when we really get some beautiful hair regrowth. And, it's a very important part of what we do. I've learned that over many, many years. 10 years ago, I don't even think that was on the radar that, we would do lifestyle changes or hormone optimization to help with hair. But today it's regular routine that we look and we say, hey, let's look at your biomarkers, let's look at your blood work, let's look at your lifestyle factors. We've seen so many things dysregulate hair, especially, post pandemic. Here we are so much stress and lockdowns, and people were not exercising, not taking care of themselves. I mean, it was a mess, and it was a really bad situation. Whether you got COVID or you got vaccinated, it could all trigger all kinds of things, autoimmune and hormone related, as well as circulatory. And for sure, the hair follicles were affected by all of the above.
Oh, yes, I've heard of the hair loss from COVID. I know my hair stylist was telling me that he was seeing clients come in that had had COVID and long COVID and were rapidly losing their hair. And for a while, nobody was really talking about it. You know, now we know that that's a consequence. I love that you hit on the balance of the hormones. I think that that's key because where I've seen women get in trouble is that they're like, oh, okay, I need testosterone, and they run and they'll get the pellets, but they're not looking at estrogen, progesterone. You know, they're not looking at the balance of the hormones, and they're getting that rapid influx from the pellets. And I have
Yeah.
seen that hair loss in those situations.
Yeah, for sure. And we've managed a lot of patients who have gotten that kind of hormone replacement therapy who have really had have had a devastating effect on their hair. So women coming in with deep receding hairlines, loss in the temple areas that was triggered by basically just overdoing it. As you said, sometimes the pellets, the physicians that apply those treatments don't really think about, what is the possibility, what is the impact, and I think go low and start slow and go, start low and go slow, I think is a good
Yes,
mantra to have in any regard when it comes to health and wellness, just to see how the body gets affected, or, do some testing, do some genetic testing. Obviously, a hormone optimization clinic may not necessarily be even looking at your hair or asking you, do you have hair loss in the family? And, for sure, they're not taking a measurement like we would do. But that's why, being hair friendly has been helpful for our what we call Bauman performance patients. Those are patients who are in that department where they're really truly being managed for their lifestyle factors, longevity, optimization, wellness, but also with a keen eye on their hair. So all of our functional medicine patients, we measure their hair before we do anything.
that's so. How do you measure hair? I've never heard of measuring hair.
Oh my gosh. Well, we've been measuring hair for a very, very long time. I was one of the first physicians to import a video microscope from France, actually, back in the early 2000s. And I think it was a PC computer based system, so it was a huge device. And the error messages came up in French, which was equally frustrating. Also, can you imagine having to talk to tech support in French? I
Oh my
mean,
goodness.
yeah, that was brutal. But I offloaded that to my IT person. But anyway, what we were doing at that point is looking at the scalp under the microscope and seeing miniaturization of hair follicles. We couldn't measure it so easily, but we could get an idea of what was going on, and we would take a picture in the same area. But today we use very powerful microscopes. So AI powered microscopes today, we go back to this exact same area again and again. We take usually 3 to 5 different measurements at the baseline when you first come in, and the AI powered microscope will count the numbers of hairs in that zone and then also categorize them based on their thickness. So whether they're 20 microns, 30, 60, 90 microns, we're going to be able to know, are those, are they thick like an oak tree or are they thin like a birch, right? We want to know. And it will actually spit out so much data to compare these different zones so that we'll know exactly what the diagnosis is immediately, right, from doing those measurements within minutes. But also that becomes a baseline so that over time we can track your progress. We can look and see, did we grow some new hairs in that area? Did the existing hairs get thicker or stronger? And then we have other tools that actually measure small bundles of hair, almost like a ponytail, right? But imagine like almost a microscopic one in different zones on the scalp. And so if you made a ponytail out of a 2 by 2 centimeter area, or like a size of a postage stamp, right, in the back of your scalp, and you had hair thinning in the front, and you did the same kind of measurement there, those two numbers are going to be very different. And so
Interesting.
that's one of the ways that we do it. That's called hair check, and we've been doing that. We've done over 100,000 hair checks, without exaggeration, over the past 15 to 18 years. So that's very much routine. Patients come in every 90 days for hair check measurements when they're on treatment. Once they're stabilized, usually it's maybe once or twice a year after that. But most patients in the first year of treatment, if they're local, they will come in every 90 days for those measurements so that we'll know exactly what's working and where.
That is so interesting and fascinating that you have this tool where you can just really pinpoint, okay, how is this working or how fast is this digressing? Now, a woman, let's say she's beginning to notice, okay, that ponytail she pulls up for the gym is getting a little thinner, or she's seeing these texture changes like I did. What should she do? Is catching this early? Can you prevent it?
So when hair loss occurs, of course, it's chronic and progressive. It's going to get worse with time without treatment. So we always say in the field of hair loss that time is follicles. And what that means is that if you waste time and you think, oh, this is just a temporary thing, it might go away, you might be losing ground, and you might be losing more ground than you think, because if someone looks at you from across the room, it requires that you have lost over 50% of your hair for it to look thin to the naked eye. And this is one of the reasons why your average everyday dermatologist may not necessarily give you much respect if you're having some hair thinning and you go to him or her and say, hey, look, I'm having some hair thinning. They look at you from across the room and you're like, ah, you've got plenty of hair left. Oh my God, that's the worst thing to say to someone with hair loss.
Yes.
So, but what we do in our clinic, as a board certified hair restoration physician, first of all, we believe you when you tell us that you're losing your hair. The second thing we do is we measure it and we try to figure out how much has been lost. But what your question was is prevention, early treatments. And that's one of the things that's changed so dramatically over the 25 years that I've been in the field. Years ago, what did women have to treat their hair loss? I mean, maybe a bottle of Rogaine for men. I mean, they didn't even have an FDA approval for these medications. But today we've got a huge plethora of things that we can do. So, of course, we want to find out your lifestyle and your habits, how you're treating your hair. Are you wearing extensions or tight braids? Are you, doing excessive coloring or straightening treatments with chemicals and heat? Is your scalp inflamed? Is it irritated? Is it scaly? Is it flaky? Is your scalp doing okay? And then what are these lifestyle factors that influence your hair? Are you well nourished? And when I mean that, I mean like with protein, right? Because you've got to grow hair from protein. Um, if you're protein deficient, you will not grow hair. And so, the obvious example of that is, starving kids in Africa, right? That's my parents always used to say, the kids are starving in Africa. Well, you look online, they're bald. They don't have hair. They can't grow hair. They're protein deficient. So you need good protein. And we talked about other lifestyle factors like sleep wake cycles. Are you dysregulated in terms of your sleep? And that can really mess up your hair, which has a natural body clock. Do you have whole body inflammation that's going on? Is your autoimmune system kind of out of whack or being stimulated by something that's in your environment or something that you're eating? How's your microbiome? Well, the microbiome of the gut as well as on your skin plays a good role in terms of regulating not just your nutrient intake when it's your gut and the inflammation, but on the scalp if you're going to have dandruff or not or inflammation. So these are just all basic things that you can try to work on. We have nutritional products that are targeted for some of these things through the practice. We have hair care and hygiene products and treatments in the practice specifically for scalp health. But most importantly, then, if we really have a hair loss situation going on, let's look at it and see what's happening. Let's get the correct diagnosis. Maybe we need to do a DNA test to take a look at your metabolic pathways that influence hair. And that might tell us which kind of treatments we might want to target first so that we're not playing a round robin of try this, then that, then this, then that, as most people do. So there's some good nutritional supplements out there. There's obviously medications, right? Minoxidil can be taken now orally instead of topically, which is really nice, super easy. We have really good topicals. They're not greasy or gooey anymore if you go to someone who uses a quality compounder. We have laser light, red light therapy devices that are very, very powerful, FDA cleared for hair regrowth. We have plenty of clinical trials out there that show that it works. And regenerative medicine, therapies that we do in the office, like PRP, platelet-rich plasma, that you can do just once a year now, not a series of, do 3 of them in a 3-month period of time, but just once a year, powerful treatments that can really protect and enhance the existing hair. New therapies like TED, transepidermal delivery, to kind of round out all the things that we do. So all of that is the prevention, right? To maintain the function of the follicles that are failing and to try to improve their function over time. And so it's not a kitchen sink approach. It's whatever works for your lifestyle and whatever works for you that we do first.
What's so interesting as you were speaking is a lot of the things you're talking about are similar to what I talk about in my health coaching practice. So if I'm working with somebody and we are trying to get them metabolically healthy, it is the sleep. We're looking at the sleep, we're looking at hydration, we're looking at nutrition. All yes, I am boy. I track my sleep. I'm a data nut. I love the numbers. The numbers don't lie. And so we're looking at all of these things. So I'm picking up from you that really hair that is thinning or the texture is very dry or the scalp is not in good condition could actually be a sign of some metabolic issues and inflammation.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, we've uncovered so much like dysregulation essentially of the body, looking at people who have come in with just a hair loss symptom or concern. And vice versa, when we start to regulate their metabolic health, their hair growth improves. And I mean, it kind of sounds, maybe people listening don't understand that, but doesn't it make sense? Hair follicles are the most highly metabolic cell population in your body. What does that mean? That means that they're constantly dividing, they're constantly renewing themselves. They're actually like every follicle is like a 3D printer, right? But what if the printer runs out of ink? Well, or is, dysregulated in a certain way? Well, then what you get is this strand that either loses its color, loses its shine, loses its texture, and then eventually the strand is thinner and weaker and wispier over time. And so if you look at all of these different things in a holistic way, you can absolutely move the needle in terms of better hair growth. And I guess it's a bit of a new concept because in the world of prevention and preventative care, uh, you know we're used to putting just a band-aid on something, and like I said, and even in hair transplants, years ago we didn't even have preventative therapies. Most surgeons just did surgery, and I'm sure today some of them still do. But what we spend a lot of time talking about is how to protect the hair that you still have and how to make that hair part of the solution so that it's not part of the problem later on. And that's how we get our results. I mean, that's like a combination of things. I'm sure I mentioned to you previously about my dad who has hair loss, but also he's a dentist. And so, I mean, what is he trying to do? I mean, dentistry is one of those professions that's trying to eliminate itself, right? Trying to teach people how to take care of their teeth so that they don't have to have a tooth pulled, they don't have to have a root canal, and so forth. So if he can teach you at a young age how to brush and floss and come into the dentist office and get your hygiene appointments, you're going to be able to keep your teeth healthy. And the same is true with hair, but nobody taught you that when you were 5 years old.
Mm.
So I'm trying to teach people now, and that's why we see patients at a much younger age. And circling back to your question about prevention, that's why getting on top of it early is the key to success. Because once the follicle's dead and gone, all we have left is hair transplantation. And sure, it's not painful, it's not pluggy, it's less invasive than years before. It's not going to leave you with a scar. There's no stitches or staples anymore today with hair transplantation. But so transplants are quicker and easier today than they ever were in terms of recovery. They do take a lot of labor to perform, but the good news is that if you get on top of the hair loss early, you may never ever need a hair transplant. And I see many patients in my practice today that if they stay with the course of treatments, they're not going to need a transplant procedure, which is nice.
That is. Well, what about if there's that hereditary factor in there? Is that making it more difficult?
Well, hereditary hair loss is really what we primarily treat. And so, all of the therapies that I mentioned previously, the lifestyle factors, of course, but also nutrition and then the medications, the laser light, regenerative treatments, PRP, PDO, exosomes, or even the TED treatments are designed to protect your hair from the hereditary hair loss. Medications can help with that for sure, as I mentioned. Um, but if the hair loss has already occurred and the density is depleted, whether you're seeing a receding hairline or not, or you just want to densify that frontal zone, in our women, we can certainly transplant those areas within reason. Now, if you're really, really early in the stages of hair loss, you may not be a great candidate for a hair transplant. And not all women are great candidates for transplants. But in my practice, nearly 40% of our patients in a surgical realm are women. And so we're doing female pattern hair loss restorations. We're doing female hairline lowering or temple areas in many cases. We're doing eyebrows and eyelashes. We're also doing scars from plastic surgery or loss from surgical procedures. or addressing other factors that might be influencing the hair. There are other, medical conditions that can happen to the scalp, inflammation, which causes scarring in some of our patients that needs to be addressed before a transplant, or that may preclude you from having a hair transplant. So, but hereditary hair loss is not one of those. Hereditary hair loss is actually, that's what we treat bread and butter every day.
Interesting. And I was always told that hereditary gene comes through the mom. Is that right?
Well, the mom's dad, right? It's always it's an old wives' tale actually that occurs that way. So we know now that there's 200 different SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms in the DNA that are related to hair loss, hair color, quality, texture, the speed at which hair loss occurs, the locations that it occurs, and so it's not just mom's side of the family. There's plenty of blame to go around. It could be on the dad's side as well. So, it's not only X-linked, so to speak, on the X chromosome. There's plenty of other factors that go into it. But remember, your DNA is not set. It's not set in stone that that's what's going to happen to you. You can take action. So, if you're thinking that your ponytail is thinning out a little bit, your part line is widening, or your hair texture is changing, that's the time to really get on top of things and really start to seek out and do your research and find a physician who can help you, and a team who has the access to these techniques and technologies to get the job done.
Now, what about you had mentioned earlier just the abuse that women put their their poor hair through, all of the curling irons and the blow dryer and the
Yeah.
extension and the color. How much is that playing into everything, and what can women do? Because I know, as a woman, there's certain things I don't want to give up.
No, you're not going to give up color if you don't want to be gray. So I can understand that. We don't have a treatment for gray, although we're working on some things that seem to be helping, which is nice. But here's the thing: if you overdo it, right? So let's think about the hair itself. It's a fiber, like almost like thread that you would use to create a silk blouse, right? If you mistreat that piece of clothing, you leave it out in the sun or you hit it with a hot iron, you're going to degrade those threads. Even if you wash that a piece of clothing incorrectly, those threads will degrade, right? So let's think of our hair as that dead tissue that it is. It's a thread. And if you overdo it, whether it be straightening treatments, the Brazilian blowout, these harsh chemicals, the heat that it's required to do all that, that's manipulating the curl, right? Like a blowout treatment is manipulating the curl. You have to break the disulfide bonds, and the heat and the chemicals disrupt the cuticle, which is that protective coating of the hair. And once you've disrupted that cuticle, if you do that again and again, first of all, it loses its shine. So the hair fiber loses its aesthetic value when it's not shiny, right? Shiny is better. It also feels different. It gets rough. So you could feel a hair that's been over processed. You run your finger down the length of it, and it feels different than a virgin hair. It has a roughness to it. And then also it loses its moisture barrier. So if there's moisture getting into the hair fiber, when you go to comb it, that's the most common time that breakage can occur. But of course, again, if you over process it, I mean, all of us have heard of women and men who have had their hair colored and like burnt, right? Like, what does that mean? Like, how do they burn their hair from hair color? Well, a chemical created so much activity to try to break those disulfide bonds that the hair literally snapped. So that's like a branch of a tree that got snapped in the wind and broke off. That's not so good, right? And so we want to try to avoid all of that. And of course, I'm not going to forbid you from doing your color, Carol. You're going to still use your color, and you could still use your tools, to straighten and style your hair. But let's just be mindful that maybe there's like a cooler setting, or less often we can do these harsh treatments. Or if you're doing a straightening treatment, let's not do a Brazilian blowout, but let's do a smoothing treatment. It might take a little bit longer, but it's going to be more gentle on your hair and create less breakage. Now, the other factor is the hair extensions. And so I'm sure if you've got some hair thinning and you're talking to your stylist, they may have already suggested to you, oh my God, well, let's just throw some hair extensions in there. Well, if you put extra tension, which is what an extension does, put that extra tension on the hair fiber, what are you pulling on with that extra weight? You're pulling on the follicle. The follicle is that organ under the skin that's making the hair. And if you put extra tension on the follicle, well, number one, you could literally rip the hair right out of the scalp. And if you do that again and again, the follicle could be permanently damaged. But just that extra tension can disrupt the hair follicle and create the next cycle of hair to grow thinner, weaker, and wispier over time. And so hair extensions, wigs and weaves, those are all very dangerous items when it comes to protecting your hair health. They're all going to be detrimental to some degree.
This is really good to know because I actually do have hair extensions in, but when he changes them out, I can see, the health of my hair, and it's held up pretty well. He does use very, very they're like thin bonded
Sure.
ones that aren't
Hmm.
particularly heavy, and if they come out, they
Right.
just slide. So I don't know
Good.
if the type of extension makes a difference.
Well, of course. So the type of extension, the length of the extension, how many hairs are being attached to how many of your hairs? I mean, if you've got 100 hairs, is that hanging on one? Hope not, right? So
No.
what's the ratio there? And then how often is it rotated around? But if you're prone to hair loss, just remember that extending the hair around the back and the sides of your scalp and potentially hurting that hair, those are the follicles that we might need for transplants later on. So you're basically
Mm,
depleting your best quality
mm,
hair with the hair extensions. So hair extensions look beautiful. They're addictive as crack cocaine.
they
I'm the
are.
first to admit it. They look amazing and great, especially if you're on stage or, in the entertainment world, or you have a prominent position in your social network. Hair extensions look amazing, but there is a risk there. So you should be on therapy. You should be on treatment. You should have someone measure your hair when those extensions are not in, so that you'll know, hey, is my hair extension person really on point when it comes to taking care of my hair? Or are they being a little haphazard, or are they overdoing it? And the only way you're going to know is to do those measurements. So just like you're tracking your sleep and you got your glucose monitor and you're doing your body composition, you want to know how much hair is in each zone on your scalp if you want to sleep well at night. I think, if hair is important to you, those are the things that we need to do. And you can't just take, unfortunately, a bird's eye view of it or a naked eye view. And even a hairstylist may not be able to tell you, because these changes occur subtly without it being noticeable to the naked eye. Now, there
Mm,
are cosmetologists out there that have training in trichology, which is a study of hair and scalp, and we do classes. So just like you're a health coach, we do hair coach classes. And so
interesting.
cosmetologists can take a hair coach certification class and learn how to use these tools to measure. In fact, if they take the class on hair coach, they get the tool for free. And we've provided hundreds and hundreds of cosmetologists with these tools so that they can measure hair, as well as hair breakage. So these are the things that we need to be aware of in the world of beauty. That again, there's when it comes to color and extensions and things like that, there's no safe cigarette, but you want to try to not inhale. I guess, I don't know.
No, I see what you're saying, and I'm sure it makes a difference, who you're going to, how knowledgeable they are. I have been
Of course,
fortunate with that. The gentleman I go to
yeah,
is very, very much into the health of the hair,
attune,
very, very knowledgeable. So I've been fortunate there, but I have seen bad extensions and just like you said, attaching too much to the
yeah,
follicles. So I love that you have a program to train individuals in this. That is pretty
yeah.
cool. Very
Yeah, our
cool.
hair coach program has been around for over 15 years. There are hundreds and hundreds of people who have taken that class, both physicians and beauty professionals from all over the world, and they get access to our protocols, treatment protocols, the prescription items, like everything from the devices, like the different laser light devices that we can prescribe and dispense. We can co-consult if they're non-physicians. We can work together. They do the measurements. We can prescribe treatments from a distance. A lot of our patients are long distance and virtual. And so if you don't have a hair coach in your neighborhood in Albuquerque, then, your hair extension person sounds like a great person who could qualify for the hair coach program and learn how to do those measurements, you know, and, the hair coaches that we have certified around the country, they love being able to tell their clientele just how great their hair is doing. And so it's a really, really nice treatment, set of treatment protocols and a set of classes. Is very hands on, and the stylists and even the physicians love that. So we do that right here in Boca Raton, Florida. Not a bad place to come for training, actually,
Oh, not at all. I
or
wouldn't mind
treatment
that
if
at
you need
all.
it.
No, I'm just fascinated by all of this. I want to touch on the stress piece because I've known
Mhm.
of two of my friends, and both of them, one went through a loss of a grandson, and almost immediately that hair started falling out at a rapid rate and is still, it just has not come back. The other friend had, she actually cut herself pretty seriously with a knife while cooking, went to the emergency room. Now, she's not sure this is related or not. Over the course of the next few days after that injury, her hair just came out in clumps. Can you speak a little bit into the stress part of this, the physical or even emotional stress?
Sure. I mean, we know physiologically if your body is fighting something, right? That can affect your hair. I mean, COVID is a great example of that. If
Hmm.
you're hospitalized, you're undergoing surgery, you're under general anesthesia, follicles will shut down. Now, you typically don't see that shed until weeks later. It's not something that happens immediately. Obviously, if you're taking a medication like, God forbid, a chemotherapy drug, it happens a little bit quicker. Those are specifically designed to interrupt things in your body that are dividing quickly, which, as you hello, it's your hair and your bone marrow and your gut. And so why those are the most common side effects from chemotherapy, right? Um, but let's just talk about like perceived stress, right? Now, of course, stress is something that's, evolutionarily good, right? The saber-toothed tiger is chasing you. You want to be able to get the
Hmm.
hell out of
Yeah,
there.
for sure.
But the idea is that once you get away, you can rest. And so the saber-tooth is not chasing you for like weeks and weeks and weeks on end, right? And we know in many areas of our body, excessive exposure to cortisol, which is the stress hormone, dysregulates just about everything. So, it can mess up your sleep, which messes up your metabolism. It impairs your healing ability. I mean, there's so many things that cortisol does in a bad way. And certainly cortisol exposure, extensive cortisol exposure, is one of the things that shuts down hair follicles. And the stress response, that happens generally in the body, right? Are let's just say that the axis of glands, without going into the great detail, is what stimulates that cortisol to express itself. There's also a similar kind of pathway in the hair follicle. So the hair follicle can actually undergo its own stress and create a stress response. And so, what do we do about all of that stress? Well, a lot of times we're counseling our patients on what's causing the stress, and if they can avoid it or not. But if it's like a job that they have to have, it's their role and responsibility as a first responder to take care of us. Or, we do a lot of work. I volunteer a lot with our military veterans. They come back with post-traumatic stress disorder. They've been undergone and seen things that no human should see, and they're trying to reintegrate back into society. And their roles and responsibilities are different here than they were in the field of battle, in the crucible, as they say. So all of these things can really trigger a hair loss situation to occur. So if we can't manage, we have to learn how to manage the stress a little bit better. So can we sleep more or more effectively, more efficiently? Are there things that we can do, meditation, exercise, to work on that? Look, honestly, some people write poetry, some people go to the shooting range to manage their stress, and that
Hmm.
you just have to kind of find your way. Um, I would bet that one of your big stress relievers is getting over to the gym.
Yes,
And
it is.
and for those of us who do work out on a regular basis, we all know if we're in a place and time where we can't get to the gym, that's stressful. You know, and so we have to try to manage our stress through these methods. What's in a lifestyle way. But the good news is that there's also other things that we can do. And I'm sure you've heard of ashwagandha, which is a
Hmm.
nice stress adaptogen for the body. And this became wildly popular in the practice during the pandemic. So whether you were physiologically stressed with COVID, or you were just simply locked down away from your family and friends or job and coworkers, and you couldn't go outside or for whatever reason walk on the beach. God knows why that was a thing. Ashwagandha was a great way to make your body more resilient to the effects of stress, and so we do recommend that and prescribe that to patients today. And a lot of our patients do very well on simple ashwagandha along with some stress management skills. Um, for me personally, I like pulsed electromagnetic field and far infrared sauna, and trying to track my sleep, get better sleep, better, deeper sleep. And so we counsel our patients on how to eat better so that they don't stress themselves out, in our functional medicine part of the practice, the Bauman performance side of things. So it all works together. But yeah, stress can be a killer and it will kill you. I mean, cancer, heart disease, stroke. I mean, what do these things all have in common? you know, it's not a coincidence. Stress is a killer. So we really have to work on all of these things, in a balanced kind of way. The spokes of a wheel almost, if you think about it that way, 360 degrees. You know, to take care of our hair as well as the rest of our body, so that we could be, fully present and focused for our loved ones, for our work, and for me, for my patients. Those are the things that I focus on myself.
I really don't see it as a vanity measure. I know some people look at things that way, but to me, having self-confidence and, just feeling the self-esteem go up, it's so profound because I see that when women start to, let's say, lift weights and change their body that way. And yes, they start for these aesthetic reasons. I want to look better. I want to look in the mirror and look better. But then it just translates to other aspects of their life. And, the next thing you know, they're taking a new job or a new career. And it's that newfound confidence. And I'm assuming that's the same, with hair.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now you can go to the gym and try to work on that, weight reduction or increasing muscle mass and getting more tone. Unfortunately, you can't go to the gym and grow more hair. So,
I wish.
just to let you, yeah, unfortunately, that's not something you can do. But there are habits that you can do at home, whether it be getting the right medications or supplements, getting the, red light therapy devices that are the good quality ones, not the Amazon ones, please. Those are underpowered. Seeing a physician, just like you would go to a trainer to help you kind of guide you on your health journey in terms of strength training, for example. That's what we are. We are hair coaches in that way. I consider myself that. Um, but yeah, but evolutionarily, I think it makes sense that, yes, you want to look good and feel good, and mind body kind of work together in that way. If you have tension in one part of your body, it's hard for your mind to relax, but you can use your mind to work on that relaxation of the muscle. And when the body and the mind synchronize, that's when everything works together. So I think that's where the power is, right? So when someone is looking in the mirror, whether it's a man or a woman, and they see the hair that they had when they were youthful start to fade away, of course it's going to affect them
Mhm.
psychologically. And they're going to wonder, hey, is this something I can do about it? And if they feel like they don't have control over it, it's just like not having control over other parts of their body that might be changing with age. And we're not going to go down on that fight. We're gonna go down. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to fight hard to make sure that those changes, are mitigated or at least delayed, and that our function and our capabilities are in good shape. And hair is a big part of that. Hair. I think evolutionarily, when you look at a man from across the room, men always say, "Well, why is this happening to me? Why do I have male pattern baldness?" And I say, "Well, Mother Nature put a ticking time bomb on your head because if you're losing your hair, it's a sign of age, and maybe you're not as good of a mate." And so, back in the caveman days when we couldn't explain to each other what was going on, you could look across the cave and try to figure out if that person was a good match for you, and if you could propagate the species. And so, you know, people had to look a certain way. I mean, because that was the communication that our lizard brain was working on, to propagate the species, so to speak. And so you need to make a snap judgment, man or woman, right? And so I think that's why hair is kind of important. It's also something that we're born with, that we had the hair, and so it's not something that you didn't have before. Maybe you didn't have those curves or those lips and things like that. You can cosmetically get those things, enhanced. But hair is something that you were born with amazing hair, most likely, or at least a good amount of it, even if it was thin. And so when you see it change, you want to take action. And I think that's kind of the take home message, that, people shouldn't feel like, oh, the hair is just a vanity thing. Because as that first patient that I saw, even before I knew how to do a hair transplant, even before I knew that there was a treatment to make his hair look and feel better, or, I learned that the hair changed his life. And it can change other people's lives too. So if you're concerned about your hair, let's get going. Let's do something about it. Let's just sit around.
Absolutely. I'm in agreement with you. Anything that can make us feel better, look better, I say do it. I have no qualms when it comes to that. Well, this has been really a delight to speak with you and have you share your knowledge. As we start to wrap up, I really want to be respectful of your time. First of all, was there something that I didn't mention or ask that you think the listeners should know? And then secondly, how can people get a hold of you and work with you?
Sure. Well, I think probably one of the things I get asked most often is, can I look around the corner and see what's coming next? Everybody wants to know what's the new exciting thing, what's come out. And of course, we've been on top of so many really cool technologies over the year, help pioneer minimally invasive surgeries. We help launch things like, for example, exosome therapy for the scalp, which is basically like a stem cell treatment without using the cells. We just use the signals. Transepidermal delivery, which is a non-invasive treatment tool that we use in the office that has, for many patients, replaced PRP because there's no needles and no discomfort at all during that process. But looking around the corner, everybody always wants to know, when is hair cloning going to be available? And there's right now we
Mm,
don't have anything that such as hair cloning or hair multiplication, but certainly there are plenty of PhDs and smart people doing research on hair follicle multiplication and organ engineering, if you will, and the field of biomedical engineering is just accelerating at such a rapid pace. I think we'll have some of that in our lifetimes for sure. And how do we get ready for that? And so, one of the things that we've added to the practice just this past year, last year, was hair follicle stem cell banking. And so, we can now non invasively take the biologic material of the hair follicle, which contains stem cells, by the way, mesenchymal stem cells, which have been proven to be able to move into any kind of cell population you would want: brain cells, nerves, muscles like heart, organ tissue, cartilage, bone, you name it. Those hair follicle stem cells are really powerful and super accessible because they're just sitting right under your scalp, and you can basically pluck a hair and get them. So we now can non-invasively pluck those hairs, save those stem cells, cryopreserve them. So hopefully in the future, we can use them not just for hopefully hair cloning when that occurs, but also for tissue regeneration repair, maybe organ replacement. And I banked mine, last year, and I encourage everybody to do it because not only can we get some really exciting new therapies coming from those own autologous stem cells that we bank for you, but also it gives us kind of that insurance policy in the future that now we have those cells frozen in time and we can use them later on and expand them potentially or convert them into organs and tissues and things like that, not just hair but other things, as that technology comes of age, which, as again I said, is coming. So hair follicle stem cell banking is a kind of a peek into the future, I think. So if you're interested in any of that or anything we've talked about today, the second part of your question was where people find me. Most people start their hair restoration journey at baumanmedical.com. That's BAUMAN medical.com. It's got thousands of pages of information on the latest and greatest treatments. I've written all the pages myself. It's got hundreds of hours of videos, instructional videos, informative videos, fun videos, long ones, short ones, you name it, on all the different technologies that we have. There's obviously thousands of before and after photos of patients who have had their procedures done with us. And that's the place to start your journey. Even if you just want to ask a hair loss question, you can go to baumanmedical.com/ask. And so that page is just a Q&A. You just can ask a question right there privately. And my team and I will get the information right back out to you. Obviously, you can also start a consultation there. So you can click on schedule consultation, and there's a short form. And many of our patients, I may have mentioned before, nearly 50% of our patients start their consultations and connect with the office virtually from their home or phone right there at baumanmedical.com. And so that's a great place to not just get information, but also schedule a time to chat with me or a member of my team. I have an amazing nurse practitioner. I have an associate surgeon. I have my functional medicine practice, which is called Bauman Performance. And all of that is easily accessible through baumanmedical.com.
oh, Dr. Bauman, thank you so much. I'm going to make sure this is all in the show notes, and I'm going to be checking out what you offer for sure. This has been just fascinating and so much value that you've given to the audience. Thank you so much.
Carol, it's my pleasure to be with you. And I look forward to seeing all of the questions that come into you about hair loss. And if we have the opportunity to circle back and answer some of those, we can always do an IG Live or create another recording if you like from those questions. It's one of those things that we see a lot of when we do these types of interviews, that everybody's got a unique question for themselves. And so, again, either at baumanmedical.com or have them send them to you, and then we can revisit it.
Oh, I would love that. Let's most definitely plan that for the future. I know questions are going to be coming in. I was thinking of so many even as we were speaking. So thank you again. And to our listeners, wherever you are in the world, we wish you every blessing. Bye bye.